Good evening. I'll turn it over to Hugh Jansen.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Louis Lemaire. Before I start, I would like to introduce our Colonel Commandant. She will give the welcoming address to this, ma'am. If you mind going first and welcoming everybody, that would be appreciated.
Oh, no audio.
There you go. Oh, I found the button. Yay. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to join all of you tonight. Welcome, everybody. This is going to be an exciting journey. I'm so looking forward to learn alongside with you a little bit of our history as a branch, people who came before us. This is supposed to be or should be an inspiration, a reminder of where we come from and what our purpose is as a branch, as a signals or Sealy person. We come from our past, and the past inform our future. So I'm looking forward to this, learning a little bit more about what our forebears have accomplished, what we can be proud of, and preparing for an amazing trip in April and May of 2023. So thank you very much for all the work that the organizers and the organizers have put forward in the last 3 years to bring us to this point. And I'm looking forward to learning alongside all of you. Thank you very much for having me with you tonight.
Thank you, ma'am, very much for the introduction. And further to her words, I'll just now do the intro part, and I'm just going to go through some of the aspects of the reasoning, one of the tour and two of the battlefield study tour that you really need to have before you go on this trip. First of all, I'd like to welcome particularly all the supported serving members that you've been nominated by your units. You are our future leaders of the branch, and this is going to be part of your military education for further reference down the road when you become the leaders. The purpose of these 6 battlefield study sessions will be to give you a military perspective of the battles the Canadian soldiers and aviators had gone through in the liberation of the Netherlands. Also, the tour will give you a perspective of the Dutch people themselves and what was involved or how they saw the occupation. I can directly relate to that as I'm a Dutch Canadian and technically a first generation Dutch Canadian. Mind you, I was 12 months old when my parents came over from the Netherlands to Canada in the May of 1950. My parents decided to immigrate from Holland, from Europe, 1, to seek a better life, and 2, the hardships in Europe were not really improving that much. So immigration then, the main spots for immigration were Australia, United States, and Canada. They decided on North America, but why did they choose Canada? They choose Canada mainly because the United States at that time still had the draft or conscription. Both my parents grew up during the Depression and were occupied during the Second War for its total length. And both of them being teenagers during the war. So really they had somewhat of an exciting time because things were different and challenging. But it was Canada because they knew what war was like and really didn't want to see their offspring be involved in such fighting. Now, it so happens there's 5 of us in my family, 1 brother and 3 sisters, and 4 of us ended up wearing CF greens. So his plan sort of backfired as we volunteered from the ground up ourselves to join. I personally joined in October of 1965 and retired in May of 2009 as a Class A reservist. And I've happened to live and work in all the provinces and territories of Canada. I lived in the West for over 20 years, in Southern Ontario for the rest. I lived in the high Arctic for 3 years. So I've had a sampling and have been in, like I said, in every territory, either with my civilian job. I worked for TELUS Canada, Satellite Communications, in the industry for 35 years. So I had a good sampling, but I had over the dinner table growing up, there's lots of, you could say, war stories, and some of them directly relate. And you will hear some of that from one of our main presenters, which I will speak to later, that will do a presentation for us that was chosen as a honorary captain by a line unit during the Second War when they were in Holland. So pay attention. This will give you a very good perspective of what was involved. Like I said, both from the military aspect and from the occupation aspect. So let me sort of give you a bit of a background on the putting this tour together. Initially started with the previous Colonel Commandant Kevin O'Keefe back in 2018, and it was targeted to have the tour go for 2020. And of course, we know what happened then with respect to the pandemic, and it had to be stopped. Automatically, it did not go again for 21. Then we restarted everything and planned for 2022. And late in that planning, really, we had to make the decision of not going again rather late because of the way the pandemic was still shaping up. This is our 3rd attempt of replanning, and everything looks pretty darn good. Currently, we have 59 that's already committed to attend, 42 will be in uniform, and 17 will be retired and family members. And I'll speak to a little bit of that later in a different presentation when I go over the highlights on the numbers. Overall, to support yourselves going over there is going to cost roughly around $200,000. And we had to find monies from various locations. The planning committee, which comprises of 5 people, and Lieutenant Colonel Louis Lemaire is very fortunate or unfortunate being part of the original committee way back in 2018 and 19. I came on board in early 2021. So I've been at this about a year and 3/4. Anyways, we've had corporate donations and private donators to about $55,000 plus. And we've had about $14,000 donated from 29 separate individuals being allocated to Pacific units. So a lot of people in your units have contributed money for your cause to go. So basically, your units are being assessed $2,500 to support yourself going, and then you're assessed for $300, and then the rest of the money, approximately $1,600 to $1,700, is coming from the branch itself, and that money comes from the branch. from what's called a CNE Foundation Museum Fund. And that is also supported from corporate donations and private donations. So there's a lot of money coming from different locations to get you off the ground. So that's all I got. I want to say currently on the welcoming side on that part, and I'll have a little bit more to say on some of the tour highlights, but I'd like to give it over to Brigadier General Dave Patterson, retired, who will be our main man on the ground for the tour. Dave, over to you.
Thank you, Hugh, and it's great to be here again. I can probably say, although maybe somebody out there, as I've been here since day one of this trip in 2018, so I'm looking forward to finally getting it executed and delivered on the ground in the Netherlands, where we can go and enjoy the country and also learn a lot about the history of the Second World War, Canada's participation, and also the vital contribution of the signals organizations that existed at the time, and pay tribute to their sacrifice. So what I'm going to do now is just share my screen here with a little presentation that'll just go over the highlights of the trip. And Hugh, if you want to step in there, there we go. Can you see that? Are you good to go? All right. So,
Good to go.
so the trip signals in the liberation of the Netherlands. That's important because that's going to be it is going to be our focus. We're going to look at the larger history of what was going on at the time, but always with a focus of how was the signals, the Royal Canadian Corps signals at the time, and other signals organizations in, for example, the Air Force, were supporting that incredible effort to free the world from Nazi tyranny. So, aujourd'hui, je vais présenter un aperçu de notre voyage, l'équipe qui m'aidera durant le voyage à livrer le voyage et notre itinéraire quotidien en sommaire avec quelques images de qu'est-ce que nous attend en Pays-Bas et toujours le temps à la fin pour vos questions. Hugh, if you do want to jump in anytime, just pipe up and we'll carry along. So, as has been mentioned, this tour has been in preparation for coming up on, well, it's 4 years of preparation, and to deliver it, and the patience of everybody involved, and the understanding with the realities of the COVID pandemic is greatly appreciated, and we actually received, by and large, great support from our providers to make sure this happens. We didn't lose a lot of money. So this is a 10-day trip. As I said, the liberation of the Netherlands, crucial role played by signals to enable victory. You must remember that in 2020, this would have been, or it still happened, the 75th anniversary of the end of the war. So there were a lot of ceremonies, a lot of Canadian involvement. In the Netherlands, it's only every 5 years that these events are actual holidays. Their Remembrance Day and their Liberation Day, which is the 4th and the 5th of May. In between, they still have ceremonies, but it's not a national holiday. So in 2020, it was going to be a big one, of course. They're expecting lots of veterans, or the remaining veterans that were able to travel over, and we had to, of course, postpone. But the aim of this, as I say, 3 aims: education, commemoration, and strengthen the links with the Dutch signals. So the team, you got me, story and guide, just a little bit about me. I'm a retired gunner, so I understand the value of signals. Without signals, guns don't do much work. I retired in 2017, and actually now work for the Commissionaires here in Eastern Ontario. I'm the CEO of the Eastern Ontario Commissionaires, and I'm still continuing to run my battlefield tour business on the side, but it's pretty much been on hold for the last 3 years, as you can imagine. Our other guide is John Rickert, Major John Rickert, who's a Strathcona officer, still serving. He works at Fort Frontenac here in Kingston. And he works in the professional military education side of things. He's written several books on, he's probably, let's see, amongst the top one or two authorities on patent, general patent, based on the books that he's written and the renown that he's gained in the States. And he's about to publish a book on Guy Simmons, the Canadian Corps commander during the Second World War. And then to do admin support, make sure the food's there waiting for us and the buses are at the right time, and running around in the background is a guy named Ron Bragdon. Ron is if any of you know him, Ron is a retired Patricia paratrooper. He's been retired for probably about 20 years. Very keen guy, very enthusiastic. And yeah, I've worked with him in the past on my Italy tours. And so he'll be there to provide administrative support from a tour point of view. So that's our team. So as we set off, we'll be coming from all across Canada. Last time we had somebody coming from Alaska. I'm not sure if we do this time, but we had somebody coming from Alaska on the last group, which was a bit complex, but they were going to make it. We'll meet at Pearson or Montreal airports, fly to Amsterdam, and arrive on the morning of the 29th of April, or am I updating my slide here? 29th of April. So we fly overnight. We arrive early in the morning on the 29th. So that's just a travel day, everyone getting through and checked in as we head overseas. So when we get to Amsterdam, the plan is to go basically straight to the Airborne Museum. And of course, the way it works, there'll be two buses with about 30 people in each bus. And to avoid having 60 people show up at a museum at once and go through the turnstile, we're sort of having a round robin of visits. So during that day, everybody will see the Airborne Museum, the Airborne Cemetery, and the airborne battlefields around Arnhem. Of course, Arnhem, not much of a Canadian battlefield, but a very renowned battle. I don't know if you've seen the movie. The signals sort of get a bad rap in that movie with the wrong crystals and whatever they end up blaming the signals for not being able to communicate to the bridge. It turns out that's not actually the case, but it makes a good story for a movie. And so that day will be our airborne day. Relatively want to keep people moving because, as you know, you will be jet lagged, and then get into the hotel relatively early, around 4 o'clock. Have a reception there, and get everybody fed and into bed relatively early so they can get over that jet lag. My experience is this: if you stay up during the day and keep active, go to bed around 8:30, 9 o'clock, and sleep all night, your body clock gets reset and you're good for the next day. So that's day one. That's just some pictures. There's the Airborne Museum, which actually only barely survived COVID. It was in danger of closing, but it got some support from the Dutch government and some from private donations. So it is still there. The Airborne Cemetery in Oosterbeek, and that's our hotel in Nijmegen, the Mercure Hotel, right in the center of Nijmegen, right near the train station, right near lots and lots of restaurants. So I think that this next slide shows you can see our, let me just give me a little pointer here. There we go. So you can see this is our hotel over here by the train station. The little orange circles are just some of the restaurants within about 200 meters of the hotel. So there's lots and lots of choice. We'll put together a list. On our first recce back in 2020, we checked out some of them. But with this tour, we have a couple of dinners. The reception on the first day is sort of a finger food stand-up reception. And then we have a final dinner. But for the most part, for dinners, you're on your own to go out and find a place. Ron Bragdon, our admin guy, will make reservations for you if you want during the day while we're out. If you want to make a group reservation or go out in a bunch. As I said, there are lots of choices around Nijmegen. Nijmegen is a university town in the Netherlands, so it's very active. terms of people being around, and quite a nice little town. And it was the Canadian headquarters during the winter of 1944-45, so it is a Canadian town as well. Oh, sorry. There is the big star. There is a Starbucks for those who need their Starbucks coffee. There is one in the train station. So day 3, we will go into Germany and tour the Operation Veritable sites. Operation Veritable was the largest operation controlled by a Canadian during the Second World War, where we attacked into the Reichswald from the Netherlands into Germany to try and clear the Germans out of the south bank of the Rhine River. And we're going to talk about that in more detail later on in one of the other talks. We'll visit the Freedom Museum in Groesbeek. That also has undergone a massive renovation from when I first went to see it 20 years ago, and it is quite the high-tech museum now. And it's basically a museum to the liberation of that part of the Netherlands. Groesbeek was where the 82nd Airborne landed during Operation Market Garden. And we'll visit the Groesbeek Canadian War Cemetery, where there are 16 signalers in that cemetery, and then one other on the memorial to the missing. If any of you were on our trips to Vimy or have gone to the First World War battlefields yourselves, you will note that there are many fewer missing in the Second World War than there are in the First, because we were much better at keeping track of our wounded, and the battles weren't as bloody. So there are the Groesbeek Memorial to the Missing, which is in Groesbeek Cemetery, has about I think about 2,000 names on it for the whole of the war after Normandy. So it's and there's one signaler on there whose grave is has not been found, or he hasn't been identified. So that's that day, and those are the pictures there. The map of the Battle of the Rhineland. Nijmegen, where we're staying, is up here, so we're very close to the start line, if you like, the line of departure. We're only about 2 or 3 kilometers from where we're starting, so there's not a lot of driving that day. And there's the Freedom Museum and the Groesbeek Cemetery. Then we'll continue on the next day for Operation Blockbuster, which is the subsequent operation after Veritable, where the Canadian Corps basically drove down the south bank of the Rhine, clearing that of the German resistance, and ended up near the town of Xanten on the Rhine at the end from 22nd February to the 10th of March. This battle took about almost exactly a month, from the 8th of February to the 10th of March. It was a very tough fight in very difficult terrain through the woods and the rolling hills of the Rhineland, and posed enormous challenges for not only the combat arms but also for signals to keep up with the battle. And of course, one of the more famous incidents in the Rhineland battle is the Battle of the Hochwald Gap, where we tried to push through this very narrow gap. The 4th Canadian Armored Division tried to push through there several times and was pushed back every time until they eventually outflanked the wood. So it's a well-known and bloody battle in the Rhineland. Day 5 is when we transition over to do some of our signals liaison. So we're going to go see the Dutch Signals Museum in Amersfoort, visit the truce site in Achterveld, and have a ceremony with the Dutch signalers at the Stro Barracks. Now, you may or may not know, or may have seen during the 75th anniversary, just before the war ended at the end of April. The war ended in the Netherlands on the 5th of May. But around the 30th of April, the Germans came to the Canadians and said that the Dutch are starving to death behind our lines because we haven't given them any food, and so we need your help. So they arranged a truce where Canadian and Dutch trucks would go through the lines with food, escorted by German military police, and deliver food to the Dutch people, particularly in the cities, where they were having hard times. As you probably well known, if you grew up on a farm, farmers always have food. But people in the city run out of food pretty fast, and we sort of live that during the pandemic. You know, I'm not sure if they were hoarding toilet paper in 1945, but they were certainly ran out of food in the cities very quickly. So, and people starved to death. They say about 20,000 Dutch people starved to death during that winter of 44 or 45. So this truce was arranged where we could take our trucks up to the border, up to the front line. Dutch drivers would then take the trucks into behind the lines, deliver the food, and bring them back. And we repeat that day after day. At the same time, the Air Force was dropping food from bombers, from Lancaster bombers and B-17 bombers of the U.S. Army Air Force. We're dropping at very low level rations into various drop zones around the big cities. So quite a humanitarian effort right at the end of the war. And we're going to visit the site in Achterveld, which is where they actually negotiated the truce. So there's the images of the Dutch Signals Museum. That's an Enigma machine you can see there, very important code machine that captured from the Germans, or the technology was captured from the Germans, and we were able to read their codes. Mainly because they didn't believe it could be broken, so they kept using the codes for the whole war, and they thought it was too complex. And then this picture in the middle is the little school, which is still there, almost exactly the same. They have a little mini museum in one of the rooms. This is where that truce negotiation occurred, where the Germans came over and met with General Folks, who was the corps commander, and hammered out the details of this truce. And then down at the bottom right, you've got Stroh, where the Signals Corps barracks is. And correct me if I'm wrong, Hugh, the intention still is to put some sort of monument or plaque or something in Stroh, I think. Right. That's that was the original plan, and I think it has survived the 3 years. Day 6, we're going to take some time to look at the Air Force. And we're going to do that at a different kind of site because, of course, the Air Force was supporting all of these operations from either the UK or increasingly from the continent itself. So there's a German airfield called Dalen, north of Arnhem, that was used by the Germans up until it was captured by us near the end of the war, and then it was turned into an RCAF airfield. And the original command bunkers are still there, the radio equipment and all that used by the German Air Force. And we're going to talk about the last Luftwaffe offensive, which was called Operation Bodenplatte on January 1st. So a little bit before our time, January 1st, 1945, when the Germans, Luftwaffe basically tried to catch all the pilots when they were hungover from New Year's Eve celebrations and destroy all the planes on the ground. They had a certain amount of success, but more German planes were shot down than Allied, and of course our supply was much better than theirs. So it really was the last big attempt by the Luftwaffe to influence the battle. So we'll go and talk about that at Dalen, which was one of the airfields used by the Luftwaffe. And then our last day is sort of we call it a free, there's some pictures there. There's the museum in Dalen, there's the underground bunkers, and that's just an artist image of the attacks on the airfields. There were a lot of Canadian RCAF aircraft destroyed, particularly at Eindhoven. The Typhoons and Spitfires that were parked out on the fields were pretty severely damaged, but they were all back up in action within a few days, and the pilots, of course, weren't killed. So planes could be replaced, and pilots less so. Then then we have our ceremony days. Now we had to move these around because, of course, the 4th and the 5th don't change, so they've gradually become near the end of our time there. The 4th of May is Dutch Remembrance Day. Of course, the Dutch were not in the First World War, so they don't have the 11th of November as a Remembrance Day. But they've chosen the day before they were liberated on the 4th of May as a day to remember the war dead. So up to this point, and we will have to confirm with what the intent of the Canadian government is next year to do ceremonies. There will be some ceremonies, whether there'll be anybody coming from Canada, but certainly the ambassador and the staff from the embassy will all be there for these things. the big ceremony in the Netherlands happens in Amsterdam, and you see the king and queen there laying wreaths in Dam Square in Amsterdam. But there are ceremonies all over the Netherlands, and we will take part. We'll also visit the other major Canadian cemetery in the Netherlands, one of the three, at Holten. And once again, there are 16 signalers in that cemetery as well, who will go and pay our respects to. So a relatively light day in terms of travel. And then the next day, the 5th of May, is Liberation Day. So this is the day for the celebrations, the parties, and the marches. The original plan, and we'll see what the current plan is. There is a committee in Wageningen. Wageningen is the little town that's in the center picture there. That's Wageningen. And on the corner here is the hotel where the peace was signed, where the surrender was signed. They do something every year, and it's bigger or smaller depending on the year. So we will be there for that. That one, we will determine, or we may march in the parade, our uniform contingent will march in the Liberation Parade in Wageningen. That was the intent back in 2020, so we'll confirm that. And we'll see in terms of Canadian delegation, but there will be something will be going on. We will participate in all that, and take part in the sort of the celebration part of the Liberation Day. And on the 6th of May is sort of a free day. So there'll be options depending on how energetic and you are and what you want to do. You can certainly explore Nijmegen. Nijmegen itself has lots to see and do. We will take one of the buses and go to Amsterdam at 9 o'clock and come back at 1900 for those who want to do it that way. And there's also a very regular train service from Amsterdam, from Nijmegen to Amsterdam. It takes about 90 minutes to get there, every 20 minutes, costs 20 euros. And the last return is at 23.20 if you are so inclined. But remembering that we're leaving the next day, so we got to pack and get ready. So I'll leave that up to your discipline. Is not the part of the tour that I'm in charge of. But there's options, and if there's enough people, we have 2 buses, so theoretically we're sending one bus to Amsterdam, the other one could do something else. Like there's a military museum in Overloon. There are airborne, U.S. airborne battlefields near Nijmegen that could be looked at. So we'll define that as we go along, and maybe give you some more choices as we get closer to the event. And then back to Canada. So we'll leave early back to the airport. It's about a 2-hour drive to Amsterdam from Nijmegen. And then our flights, which are in the afternoon, back to Toronto and Montreal, and then onward travel home. So that's the tour, 10 days altogether, including 2 travel days, so 8 days on the ground. And we shall see quite a bit and learn a lot about our history and the history of the signals in the Netherlands. So that's all I've got in terms of an overview. As you see in the schedule, we will be delving more deeply into the various larger battles as we go through this professional development process on their way to the trip. But right now, I'll stop sharing so I can see people's hands and stuff. If anybody has any questions at the moment for me or for Hugh in terms of the organizers, we will take them now, or we can move on. Oh, Corporal Vardy.
Good evening, sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Great. Just wondering about the logistics of members needing to travel to either the Toronto or Montreal airport from our respective bases, that is. Right.
And I know from, if you're coming from further away than Ontario, like Kingston or Petawawa, I know we laid on buses from Kingston the last time. I think it was the plan, or a bus. But if you're coming from out west, then the travel will be booked by the travel agent.
Okay, roger that.
I can add just a bit more to that. we'll be hubbing out of Toronto for the most part, and secondary will be hubbing out of Vancouver Airport. We're getting bulk rates, and we'll have connecting flights to either one of those two centers. We'll also have a bus touring from Petawawa to collect the Petawawa people down to Ottawa, down to Kingston, and for connection to the Toronto flight. We won't be humming out of Montreal, so everything east of Toronto will be coming through Toronto, and some western going to Toronto, and some west may go through Vancouver, but we'll leave that up to the travel agency. So that's why on your questionnaire you had a question on what major city you're going to depart from, and then the travel agency, Merit Travel, will organize you to get you in the right spot for either hubbing either Toronto / Vancouver. But there'll be a bit more on the joining instructions later on that.
Thank you, sir.
Right, and I see a question in the chat about reservists and pay, and that's more of on the military side in terms of what the policy is, or in terms of leave and pay and all that kind of stuff, because there will be several occasions when you will be, I guess, invited to wear your uniform.
Yeah, I'll be answering that question later on.
Okay. Any other questions about the trip? All right, I'll hand it back over to you, Hugh.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much for excellent presentation. I'm more enthused wanting to go. Very good detail on where we're going to be. Last time I was in Holland was for a family reunion, Amsterdam only, and before that was 1952, so it's been a while. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen. I'm going to give you some of the other highlights, not so much more on the military side of things as Dave has presented, but more on the getting together. Let me just go through this and make sure this works. Okay. From the beginning. And could I get a thumbs up? Everybody can see that?
All good.
Good, thank you. Okay. Again, this is the 75th, and we're calling this 75th plus 3 tours. And really what I'm going to sort of highlight is the opportunities to get together. And there, okay. Whoop, I got to go back one. There. Okay, the Netherlands. Is being sponsored by the branch in conjunction with Merit Travel and Fields of Fire, is headed up by Dave and other organizations associated with it. But we'll be celebrating the 75th anniversary plus 3. And it's on those dates, and we'll be the Netherlands Signals will be joining us and later on. We're targeting 62 seats, and like I said, currently we have 59, and we're looking for branch members who are existing service or serving or being sponsored like yourselves, mostly who are on this call, retired members, families, and friends of the branch. So any of you that are currently going being sponsored and would like to have your spouse or any other family member to come along, you are welcome. They are welcome to attend. Currently, we have 3 seats available at a reduced rate on what the original cost was going to be. So they'll be saving over $1,100 if they sign up. So for the first 62 seats, we have a bit of a discount available. So if you know of anybody that wants to attend, please just get a hold of myself through that email, hubertjansen1949@gmail.com. And we'll see if we can get them on board. Day 3, our visit to Groesbeck War Cemetery, as Dave has alluded to. Just wanted to highlight a few other things. Overall, there are over 2,600 markers in the cemetery, and it's the largest Commonwealth war cemetery. In that cemetery, there are 2,338 Canadians, and this is resulting from all the buried soldiers in the Netherlands for the liberation of, and from the battles of the Rhineland. The commander of the army had dictated at the time that no Canadian soldier would be buried on German soil, and they were brought back to this cemetery here. So it's a very important Canadian landscape that will exist forever. Next, it would be the Holton War Cemetery. And it also has just under 1,400 of our buried there. I would like to highlight one thing there, and that happens at this cemetery, and also happens at all Canadian grave sites in the Netherlands. Let me just read you just a short narrative on a speech by a Dutch leader that was given to the children of Holton, the village of Holton, back in May of 2015 when our Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, was there. So let me just read this in part. And it sort of typifies what happens throughout the Netherlands and what my parents had also had talked to us about as well. And it is as follows. Another tradition has been the children of the area place a bouquet of tulips at each of the 1,396 Canadian headstones on the 4th of May. And when they do so, they pause and bow their heads because they know and understand it was these young men who liberated their country in 1944 and 1945. As well, on Christmas Eve, the whole of town goes to Holton Canadian War Cemetery, and on this night, they place wind-resistant candles in front of each grave and they light them. In the darkness, all one is able to see is a glow of 1,396 candles. People do not and will not forget our men of honor. That tradition is throughout all of Holland. Another highlight to get together is the evening, what's called the Sunset March over the bridge over Nijmegen. You may have seen the movie Bridge Too Far. This was that bridge. And on the 1st of May, an organization can be labeled the lead organization, and it's our tour that will be the lead organization to march over this bridge at that time. You can march over the bridge at sunset at any time, but the lead organization that has been designated for that day gets the privilege of leading that march. So this is the bridge at the time of final liberation during the war, and this is the bridge today. So this is replaced by this large bridge here, and the original bridge, as you can see, is just behind it. As you march, I apologize for the American flag and American uniforms, but that's the only picture I could I could find with the Canadian flag on it. As you march across the bridge at the sunset at 1904 on the 1st of May, the lights will dim as in cadence with your march. And at the end of the march, there's a small cenotaph below the first pier that we will pay our due respect for and to. And we march in reverence and we march in silence. So we have the privilege of leading that march on the 1st of May. Another highlight will be, sorry, my marker here is on that day that's indicated in yellow. I can't see it because I got something over it. But it will be a signals memorial dedication of a CNE plaque in conjunction with Royal Dutch Signals in Stroe, Netherlands. Stroe, Netherlands is what Kingston is to our branch. So this is their home station for signals. And on the far left here, you can see their insignia, lightning bolts with a shield head, and it's Latin, Notius Transmissionis, which means the message has passed. In essence, that's the purpose of signals, of course. On the left hand of the parade square, the diocese and reviewing stands right here. And if you notice, right here is 2 red maple trees that are planted. And this is where the plaque's going to be, and this is where the ceremony is going to be about. And the plaque is sponsored by a CNE branch in English and in Dutch. It commemorates those Canadian and Dutch signalers for their tasks and for their dedication during the Second War. On the 4th of May, on the Dutch Remembrance Day, besides Remembrance Day itself, we'll have a little evening talk by Honorary Captain Elizabeth Langford. And let me just read you a quick synopsis of Elizabeth, and it sort of describes who she is and what she's going to talk about. In her talks, Elizabeth discusses the hunger that seized them in the winter of 1944 to 45, known as the Hunger Winter. She describes how her mother boiled tulip bulbs for them to eat, slicing them very thinly to make them go further. It was a time of severe deprivation with nightly curfews and no electricity. Does that sort of ring a bell of what you see on the news today? The town was liberated by the Canadians of 17th April in 45. The soldiers' mess was set up in a house across the street from Elizabeth and her family. She would go across the street and eat breakfast with them every morning. Her mother worked as a translator for the Canadians. Before the soldiers moved on, they made Elizabeth an honorary captain in the Royal Canadian Corps of Signals. Those Canadians that were parked just across the street were linemen. She was presented with the military rank insignia, and her mother sewed the badges onto her sweater, currently on display. That picture that you see of Elizabeth holding that little blue sweater is what she presented back to our museum that's held in trust in Kingston, that very sweater. Elizabeth Langford has never stopped telling her story. In her words, when you lose your freedom, it's horrible. When you regain it, it's something you think about at least once a day for the rest of your life. Elizabeth has also written a book based on her mother's memoirs, and the book is entitled Written by Candlelight. What I just read, you could say, is paraphrasing the whole book in just a couple of paragraphs. And Another highlight of getting together is a wrap-up dinner on our free day at the Nijmegen Hotel. Always a pleasure. And whoops, let's go back one. I just wanted to highlight as well, all sponsored members and the command team, Colonel Commandant, will be presented with a rain jacket made by Storm Tech. And what you see there pictured on the right is what the jackets were for the Vimy trip. It'll be very similar. It'll have the CNE crest. Instead of Vimy, it'll have the Netherlands 2023. So that's why we were asking for your jacket sizes so we could order the correct one. For the non-sponsored members, if you want to order a jacket, they'll be at cost. They're about $86 a piece. And I'll be sending out instructions along with a sizing chart if you want to partake of getting a jacket yourself, as I will be doing myself. Well, generally we can get together at these dates that I had highlighted. When I was doing some of my research on the liberation of the Netherlands, I did find this one poster here that was very popular at the end of the Second War. Little Dutch girl in Friesland costume, fishermongers, holding the Canadian ensign and the Polish flag. You will learn in the presentations by Dave and his presenters that there was a Polish division attached to the Canadian Army during the liberation of the Netherlands. The banner, or on the bottom, you notice that she's kicking the ass of a Nazi soldier out of Holland. And on the bottom, it translates 5th of May, Netherlands free again, 1945. Over to you, Louis.
Okay, thank you very much, Hugh.
Let me figure out how to get out of it.
There should be a little button to stop sharing.
There we go.
If everybody could put themselves in the gallery view and just turn on your cameras, just so you can like maybe wave to the person in the box above you or below you or left and right, just so we can just have a quick look and get to know each other a little bit.
Oh, I'm
I would
sorry,
be-
I don't have a camera on my computer. That's my bad.
That's okay. Just if you have the capability, go ahead, please. And then you can turn them off. But just have a look at the folks that are here. This is about half the participation of what we're going to have on the trip as we're closing in on 60 people. There was at its peak tonight before a couple people had to pop off or had disconnection issues. We had about 28 people online, so that was pretty good. And I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight that our VIPs attending tonight. Once again, our Colonel Commandant, General Robidoux, thank you once again for joining us. And General Leach, thank you for joining us as well. Really appreciate your attendance tonight. Okay, I was going to get my the Sergeant Major to introduce himself from 37th Signal Regiment, Master Warrant Officer Mike Mahar, but unfortunately he had disconnection issues. I think he was running off of his phone on 5G or 4G or whatever, so it didn't work for him. So
I'm back, Louis.
Oh, you're back.
Yeah.
So you can introduce yourself if you want. Just say hello.
Hi there, everyone. It's Master Warrant Officer Mike Bahar from 37 SIGS Regiment. We're actually parading at the armories tonight because exercise Noble Skywave is on the go right now, which is basically an HF skills competition across the world. Really, we came 6th last year, and currently we're sitting in 13th place. I thought I could get on the Zoom call from the DWAN, but it wasn't letting me in. So now I'm sitting outside my truck in the pouring rain on my telephone here. So I think we're going to have an excellent trip. The planning committee has done Hugh and CO and everybody involved has done wonders to put this thing together. Lots of work and effort has been put into it, and I think it's going to be great for everyone. So that's all I have.
So thank you very much, Master Warner Mahar. Really appreciate it. So my part is the boring part. I'm going to talk a little bit about admin. I just want to say we are doing this during CNE week. As you can hear, we're doing Noble Skywave. Oh, and just, I think everybody can see my screen, right? Give me a thumbs up, Hugh, if you can see it. Good. So I get to do the boring part today, just a little bit of admin, but I do want to say that I'm excited about the tour. Just in sort of an introductory remark sort of thing is that everybody knows what's going on in the CAF, right? We're hurting for people, and you know, the news is not always very kind to us. Sometimes of our own, sometimes of people's own failures, but and obviously, you know, recruiting, even General Air, has been on television or in the news, stating how much we need new recruits to fill the ranks, because there's lots of vacancies, and that's being felt all across different industries. We're not unique among that, but it's particularly difficult, and I can appreciate that everybody's doing probably more than just their own job. And I just want to say that, like, this is such an important thing to, you know, just celebrate the fact that we are going to stick to this, and we're going to push through and pull off a really good event. I think, you know, it's extremely good for morale to reward the folks that are on this call, and to pull off an event like this. It's in a difficult time, and it just means a lot to the community that you'll participate. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to it. I'm really excited. We need some good news, and this is the exact kind of thing that I think will be excellent for our branch, to kind of put smiles on people's faces and really, you know, connect us with the history. So without further ado, so I'm just going to spend a few minutes here talking about the joining instructions. So this is kind of my outline for my presentation. So these are the kinds of things that I'm going to be talking about. So I just want to once again just go over the mission here is that we are going to go to the Netherlands and celebrate the anniversary of the liberation. We're a little late, 3 years kind of postponed, but we still want to have a good time and commemorate this important thing. We want to connect it both with, it's an important aspect of Canadian history as well as Signal's history. There's lots of stuff that you may not know about. And over the next few months, we're going to do about one event per month until for the lead up towards the trip. And that will help you understand the historical aspect of this. So I look forward to seeing you and the others as we continue these evening events. If you can't make it, like I said, it's okay. We're going to record them. You will be arranged into study groups and assigned a little bit of homework. So prepare. We're only asking for a 5 or 10 minute presentation for you to present on. So the groups will be assembled, and you're going to be given a topic that's going to relate to signaling. So that's part of the mission, is to connect with our history so that we're well prepared when we hit the ground. Okay, so COVID-19. So there's actually good news on this. What I will say is that things are still unpredictable. I just want people to remain flexible, and we're going to do, in that regard, we're going to do whatever the travel agency tells us. Okay. I just checked today to make sure I had the most up-to-date data. As of the 17th of September, there's no longer any travel restrictions for the Netherlands. The only restriction that they have is that if you develop symptoms of COVID-19, they recommend that people do a test. And if the test is positive, you have to isolate. So there's different isolation requirements depending on certain things. So those are the things that we need to keep a track of. And we're going to kind of go with whatever the latest information is right before we go. Vaccinations were previously required, but that was removed. So I don't anticipate that vaccinations will be required. But obviously, if you're serving in the CAF today, you probably have one unless you have an approved exemption. And then finally, when we get back to Canada, this was something that some of you may recall. There was the ArriveCan app that was required to come back to Canada. That's no longer required. In fact, I just came back from Europe and I didn't have any problems going through the airports in Canada. No extra screening or anything like that. So we're a little bit fortunate that we're doing it this year and that the restrictions are going to be a little bit less. But like I said, things can change. You know, the winter might be unkind to us and we might go back to masks or different other requirements. I am not prepared to make any promises on this. So we're going to go with whatever the travel agency tells us. Okay. So expectations. So for the vast majority of you, you're sponsored by your unit and the CNE branch. Like I mentioned earlier, I won't go over the study groups again. We're going to be doing this once a month, and you'll be expected to contribute a little bit to these presentations. When you come back from the trip, you are expected to bring this experience back to your units. That might be in the form of a briefing, a written product, something to go on social media, photos, and things like this. So please bring that back, okay? This event, I think, only has, one half of the value. If you don't bring something back to your unit, all the people that contributed to your attendance on the trip, all the sponsors that contributed, you got to bring something back to your unit and, really try to inform the people of what you saw, because you're going to be one of a lucky few in the CNE branch that has this experience. And it's a kind of a once in a lifetime thing for many of us. During the trip, there will be several opportunities. We're going to thank our sponsors. So we're probably going to take a little bit of photo ops. So be prepared for that. And also there may be some VIP protocols depending on what kind of event we go to. If we go do a parade, if there's a mayor or some other type of dignitary, there may be some VIPs. So just be aware of that we'll be interacting with not only the public, but also some VIPs, depending on the event. So dress and ceremonial. So most days, smart casual dress, which would be kind of like what you would wear at your mess. On specific days, there'll be the DU 1A. So the 4th and 5th of May, which are like parade days, as was mentioned. And there was a couple other ones that might fit the occasion. So any sort of cemetery ceremonies or the museum ceremony, I'm going to try to figure that out exactly which days, and we'll have them marked down. But those ones will be days where you're wearing your uniform for a portion of the day. Just make sure before you go, a few weeks out, make sure it fits, or maybe 2 months out, make sure it fits, and order replacement items for stuff that doesn't fit or doesn't look good at logistic before we go. And another note was that there might be other CAF or other Canadian personnel participating in official ceremonies, although because this is not a 5th year, like a 5th anniversary, it'll be probably a little bit less. Okay, so this is to answer the question posed earlier. So leave and duty status. Reg Force people will be on a type of leave called Special Leave Community Affairs. And we think that they're with 7 days of special community affairs, which is the maximum CO can approve, plus some short and maybe some weekends to fill up the dates. That should cover the entire period for the leave status for regular force people. So this type of leave, you can look up in the leave manual, can be used for that if you're doing community affairs stuff that has significance to the military or things like volunteer activities. For reserve personnel, we're going to consider, what we're going to request is that your unit CO considers you on duty for the events where you're attending in uniform. So that would be that we would basically ask them to pay your Class A days, i.e. you sign it, we'll bring a pay sheet or whatever, and we'll have you sign it, and then it'll be paid from your unit's budget. So that's something we're requesting to the COs, and that'll be in the admin instruction pushed down to them. If they disagree or there's some other problem, then we can discuss and come up to some sort of other compromise. But otherwise, that's kind of what the branch has done for previous trips, and it's worked quite well. And otherwise, on the days where you're not wearing uniform, you're not considered on duty. Okay, and just so for your personal financial considerations, recall that the currency is the euro. Washrooms and toilets, public ones, they usually cost 50 cents to €1. Breakfast and lunch for most days are provided on the days that we're on the ground in the Netherlands. The dinners are not, except for the special dinners, the first night and last night, basically the kickoff and the wrap-up dinner. Those ones will be provided at the hotel. Okay. And finally, get comfortable with having your picture taken. We are going to be using social media. We're going to try and take a few little videos, some photos, plus some written material. You'll be kind of tasked with writing some of this material. We want to be posting it up on CMCEN and then gathering that stuff to give to the museum afterwards. And as well, we want to publish your presentations from the study groups as we, in the next few months. We want to put those up on the CMCEN page so that everybody can benefit from that. In terms of fundraising, this is pretty much done. There's a little bit of fundraising to be done, but if anybody's interested in helping out with fundraising, or if you have family members who want to donate to it, I can give you some more information on that as well. Okay, so there's a question in the chat. Oh, that was a Colonel Commandant. Okay, it looks like she had to leave us. Okay, so the boring admin stuff is done. There might be some questions for that. I'll ask. There is. I am drafting the order, like the administration order, and sending that to the branch for their approval to make sure everything, all the stuff that I just mentioned, gets approved. So there's still a little bit of that waiting, but combat's required? Probably not. No, it's going to be smart casual and then just parade dress for the parades. Good question, though. Thanks. And yeah, so that pretty much covers it. Like I said, I'm really excited about the trip. I have personally been working on this for 4 years. It's been a long slog with multiple cancellations. And like Hugh mentioned, last year we were all geared up to go and very close. Many of you probably remember this, and I had to disappointingly send you an email in January because of the Omicron wave that was hitting right at that exact time. And I was really disappointed that we had, I think everybody realizes now, hindsight being 2020, that we could have pulled it off in 2022, but it was a very great financial risk that we would lose a lot of money and a lot of donations. And so we pulled up with, we're not the only ones. The logistics group as well, they did the same thing and postponed by a year due to the Omicron wave. So we're not alone. We made the right decision, I think, and reduced the risk. And so that we'll be able to pull off a good tour this year. So that pretty much ends it for me. I know that there's a few people that I'm looking after that I owe you an email to ask for your jacket size and some other things. And okay, so you wanted to know if we can raise funding for the $300 and your expenses, such as the dinners that are not included. Yeah, if that's the case, yes, absolutely. You can raise funds for whatever purpose you wish. But that would be like sort of personal. The dinners are expected for you to be like on your personal, that's personal funds. The $300 for yourself from the unit, as a planning committee, we're kind of indifferent. It's basically $2,800. We basically kind of created a method where it's $2,800 total, and we expected about $300 for the member to kick in themselves. But if the unit put that money in, or it was raised through another method, that would be fine. I personally don't recommend that you ask for donations to pay for your dinners, though. Anything that goes through as a donation to the Museum Foundation has a charitable status, and that would not qualify. So I would not recommend that. That's it. You're expected to pay for that on your own. Okay. Hope that answers that question. But that's a good question. Who do you talk to about how much funding has been raised currently towards the units? So that's our job. So the planning committee, each of us has a certain number of units that we're responsible for, and we talk to the chain of command about how much funding there has been raised. You may wish to talk to your chain of command that if everything is good or not, but that's mostly for the planning committee to deal with. I hope that answers that question. Okay, so pretty good, everybody. That's an hour and 10 minutes since we started. I just want to thank you all for your participation tonight. I really do appreciate like I said, some of you were on this exact call basically a year ago. It's very, very much appreciated that those of you who came back. I'm super glad that I'm seeing some familiar faces. And if you have any questions, just reach out. We will direct you to the right person, and keep asking questions, because there's stuff that we haven't thought about yet. There's always more details that we can put in to make sure that every aspect is covered. Oh, and so General Patterson, Dave has just mentioned there's some great readings here by some experts in the field of the Second World War. Go ahead, Dave. I'll stop sharing. Dave, are you there? You can unmute. Oh, something's technically wrong. Okay, once again, Zoom funniness. Don't know what's going on, but we'll just wait for him to come back for a second. I think he has some some info about readings. Hugh, can I turn it over to you for a closing remark before we get the last round by Dave when he comes back?
Certainly, thank you very much. I don't have too much to add to what Louis had mentioned, but again, if you have questions after this concerning any aspect of the tour and don't know who your representative is on the planning committee, just go through your unit sergeant major, because he's the main contact into the planning committee type of thing. So if he can't answer, he can get the answer from us at any time. Again, if you have a spouse, a friend, or a family member who wants to join, as I just received from Matthew a couple of minutes ago that I'm currently responding to, I can answer those questions right off the bat, as well as after I send my email to anybody who wants to ask about that, I will just give you a call if you give me your phone number and just explain exactly how it works financial wise for somebody who's not supported, type of thing. So you get a better picture instead of trying to explain it on the email. Again, stick with it. We're going to try number 3 will be a success, barring any operational issues next spring that we don't know about. It's going to be an exciting tour and something that you can relate to as you go on and become one of those leaders in the branch. Thank you for attending. Louis, do you want to close with anything?
No, thank you, Hugh. Like I said, the next few sessions are going to be more historically focused. This one is kind of an overview of the tour and things like this, but the next ones are going to be there'll be presentations by a historian or one of our tour guides, like either Dave or the other gentleman. I forget his name off the top of my head. Pardon me? John, yeah. So one of those guys, they gave really great briefings last year. And so it'll be historically focused, and there'll be a little bit of contribution from study groups. So thanks once again. I'm going to stop the recording. And if you want to stick around and wait for Dave to come back, you can. Otherwise, have a great evening, everybody. Thank you so much.